Well, here we go again in Job. As we read the beginning of Job chapter 1, we get our first indication of why there's suffering in the world. According to Satan's challenge to God, suffering often comes from Satan's rebellion against God's government. In Job chapter 1, we're given reasons why there is suffering in the world, and especially why innocent people suffer. And yet there's an even deeper look behind the book of Job. In this scene that we get, we see that the book of Job was written in part to reveal to us the relationship between God and Satan. Isn't that amazing? The angels are coming before the Lord, and Satan was one of them, a fallen angel. That's amazing. I've often been confused why God would even talk to Satan, but in this book we see that God communicates directly with Satan. However, God does not want us to be confused about the power of this vicious enemy. Satan is deadly and powerful. Satan hates God, and Satan hates us, but Satan's not the equivalent of God. He's under God's authority, and there are not two gods in the universe, a good God and an evil God. Satan is a created being, a fallen angel. Satan is not God's equal. The book of Job shows us right from the start that God is in control of things. Time and space and all the universe are under God's authority. God is the almighty maker of heaven and earth, and we pray to him. We do not command him. This book begins with a clear perspective from God. It is from God's perspective. And we need to keep that in mind. We often think that the Bible is for us, for our glory, so to speak. It's not. It's for us to understand how to give God glory. And this book begins from God's perspective. Everything in the universe must acknowledge that he is the Lord of all. Even rebellious Satan must confess that God is in control, and there's nothing Satan can do in heaven and on earth except with God's permission. So what's going on between God and Satan? Well, it's a test. Hard for us to grab, but Satan is testing God in his creation through Job. God has authority over Satan, but God allows the test. Many think that Satan challenges God in this book. However, it is God who really challenges Satan. When Satan comes to the courts of heaven, God says, "Satan, where have you come from?" Satan replies, "I've been roaming the earth, going back and forth in it." Satan's been roaming the earth, stirring up trouble with humans. He's been tempting and tormenting humans. So God says, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." Satan replies, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? Stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." At that, God says, in effect, let's see if you're right. Attack all of Job's blessings and possessions, and let's see if he truly loves me or if he only loves the blessings and possessions. And let's see if he truly loves me or if he only loves the wealth I've allowed him to possess. This chapter shows us Satan's activity, and it reveals Satan's philosophy and Satan's thinking. Satan is roaming the earth, as also revealed in 1 Peter 5:8. Be of sober spirit, be on alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Satan is always looking for vulnerable areas or weak points in our spiritual armor. In Ephesians 4:26 and 27, Paul warns us not to give Satan an opportunity to invade our lives when he states, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." What do you think Paul meant by that? When do we give our adversary an opportunity to attack? What's meant by that verse? That's a question.
All I can say is don't play with sin.
All right?
I'm going to give you a little illustration. Last Monday night, we came home from the Pizza Hut. I went through the garage and shut the door. And Rudy came in and said, there's a snake out in the garage.
Really?
A snake.
We don't allow those in our home.
I'm petrified. So Rudy he lost sight of the thing. And I know that they hibernate.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm calling the emergency maintenance to come down and get this snake out of the garage. I'm definitely afraid of them.
They'd love to come in the house and hide under the bed, you know.
Anyway, it was such a good illustration to me. When you leave the car or the garage door open, or if you leave yourself open to sin, Satan creeps in and you don't even know it until he starts working.
There you
so
go.
Get rid of him before things happen.
Hibernates in there. Good illustration. Yeah, I'll be dreaming about that now. I'll probably
She'll be dreaming.
have to get crutches and walk through my bedroom so I'm not underneath the bed. Yes.
Many a times when young people get married, that's a verse that I will give to them. Because I feel if you can keep yourself without being angry, don't go to bed on it.
Yeah. We subscribe to that. You know, sometimes we stay up all night fighting, but it's good not to go to bed. This anger thing seems to be at least a pivotal point here. You know, Job got angry and didn't sin. Christ became angry, didn't sin. So there's anger without sin. I mean, it's kind of a delicate balance there. God's angry with sin.
How would you define sin?
Got to ask the question here.
When it says be angry and not sin, how would you define the sin then?
The sin of anger, you mean, or just the sin? Sin is going contrary to what God would want and not giving him glory and being disobedient.
If it were the kids, would you spank the kids then, or would that be a sin? Or?
If you spanked your kids? No, there's much righteous spanking going on in the world. But I do think you have to be very careful because there's a real fine line between abuse and discipline. David was such a compliant child, we never had to spank him. So I think there's other things just about as bad. I don't know if it was sin when Becky washed out our daughter's mouth with soap when she needed it or not, but it only happened a couple of times, but she reminds us of it all the time. So I don't think she's going to subscribe to that. I mean, we do the best we can on this planet. One of the things that struck me this morning when Pastor was speaking is to die for Christ, Christians who would be willing to die for Christ. Here's my view of that. I believe we would. I believe it's more difficult to be embarrassed for Christ. Pastor Ronnie Stevens, a man I respect a great deal, I heard him the other day, and he was saying, we would be willing to die for Christ, but to be embarrassed by him, share Christ with others, talk about Christ when we're in a social setting, wow, that's worse than talking about politics. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? How do we bridge that gap? And I was just reflecting on that. Yeah,
Just want to give you a quick example of what's happened in my life regarding that point. My culture before moving to the United States never responded in the same way that people respond in the United States about a sneeze. In English, or at least in the U.S., I don't know if in other English-speaking countries they do the same thing. You say, God bless you. That's how I learned it. That's how I said it. But in the last 10 years, I've switched. I only say bless you. and I'm trying in my mind to work. It's hard to go back to God bless you.
Why?
Because of the point you were saying, at some point in my life, I thought, oh, I might be interfering with their belief in God.
So you think that they feel awkward when you say that, or?
But it's in my head. I feel awkward now. I have to work it out again and say it and force myself. Just with my kids too, I think that's where I'm going to start practicing, getting back to the comfort of saying, God bless you, and then actually meaning it.
I was talking with someone last night, and they said, you'd be really interested in this book, because it's a speaker who is really talking about how to set your life up with the metaphors of athletics and using illustrations of football, basketball, and all that. And he said, he talked a lot about God, and he was a Christian. But it wasn't too religious and it wasn't offensive because it just kind of was who he was. And I thought, what a great testimony that is. When you don't have to say, just a second, stop our conversation for a minute, I want to tell you about Christ. When you don't have to do that, when it becomes a natural part of your conversation, when it becomes who you are. And people can smell, see, and taste authenticity. They feel that. Even young children know if you're real or not. We observed this all the time when I was in the school system of coaches. They know if you're in it for them or if they were in it for themselves. If they were building some kind of a reputation to climb on the pyramid, or if they were really about the kids, about the students, about the young people that they were coaching. And I think that's part of what we need to strive for, is letting Christ be part of our life so that it's an outflow of our conversation and not an injection of something foreign. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but it starts with having a really good relationship with Christ where it is natural to include him in the conversation. Yes?
What do you think the word foothold means or refers to? I got a thought, but I wanted to see what you think.
Well, in my opinion, foothold is the beginning of where resentment and bitterness start. And resentment and bitterness can create a wonderful, fertile ground for Satan to use, because we love to hold grudges. We love to do it. We love to talk about other people and tell them how we were abused and misused and what they said hurt our feelings. And, it's a very common thing. And I think once you start, resentment can build in you where it's very difficult to root it out. That's my view.
I think so. I think the devil uses anger much to destroy people's lives. And if you give him that foothold and you don't start forgiving, you're in trouble.
When we see over 50% of our marriages now ending in tragedy, my good friend who's an attorney would say, they trace it back a lot of times. They say, can you reconcile? And they try maybe a little bit, and then they say, no way. And then you have a situation where it builds up in them such a resentment toward one another that my attorney friend basically in many cases was given all their resources for his income because they were willing to hurt one another to the greatest degree possible so that they were willing to sacrifice all their resources so the other person had nothing. I mean, it's not logical, but hate, holding resentment, grudges can do that. The same thing is true with other people who hold resentment and bitterness towards someone. They will try their best to destroy their reputation, to attack them with lies and deceit. And you have to know that that's affecting the person who's making the delivery of all that?
When I was probably about 10, I had an aunt, and she had several children, but her newborn baby, almost newborn, Janelle, died, and they said it was SIDS, but this is a long time ago, so I don't know if they knew too much about SIDS then, but they said it was crib death. And she never went to church again. And one time, I asked her, because her children were my cousins, and I asked her if I could take Carolyn to Sunday school with me. And she said, no. When you need God, He's never there for you. Mm-hmm. And that was several years after Janelle had died. But she blamed God right away for the death. And then she turned it into God isn't there for you when you need Him. Mm-hmm. And her whole life was that way.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I've been reflecting more on the resentment and grudges we hold toward one another, but this foothold could easily be the beginning of resentment toward God. And that would be even more tragic when you look at it from the eternal perspective. When we hold grudges, when we refuse to forgive others, when we nurse our anger and feed our wrath, we give Satan a foothold. What is Satan's philosophy? Satan's philosophy is me first. It's egocentric and selfish, where the core is hatred, grudges, and revenge. Can you think of examples where or why people hold grudges and seek revenge? Why is revenge so popular in our society? And what is the root of revenge? What do you think?
The root could be greed that we
Greed?
all have. Yes.
Greed?
I think a lot of times because we want to be right. And when somebody disagrees with us, that starts things.
It's definitely pride.
Okay.
I'm competitive, so I want revenge anytime somebody beats me at something. So I don't care if you disagree as long as I win. That's where it usually comes from with me.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Because I like to win too.
It comes from a sense, in my opinion, it comes from a sense of justice. And we should be, you hurt me, we should be even, I should hurt you. Plus, you hurt me first, so there should be a penalty.
Very insightful. Speaking from experience, Victor. No. One of the things, too, you could add to this list is the desire to be in control. We want to be in control. And pride is probably the root of all of it, but there's a lot of these subsets under here. Yes?
I think hatred and anger are very strong emotions. They're just the opposite of love.
Yeah.
And it's very satisfying to give in to that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel good. I got him.
Well, the only one being held hostage, though, is yourself.
I know. Some people hold a grudge against someone all their life. All
But
their
it
life.
only makes you miserable.
David? Or Chris, either one.
I'm reading the book about Louis Zeffirelli. He was taken captive during the World War II by the Japanese, and he was so tortured, but yet he went back and told him he forgave him.
Yeah. Can you think of any television shows or movies where revenge was the main theme? Think of any? There's a hand up over here. Someone said over 50%.
There's too many to count.
Yeah, it's over. That's one of the main themes, isn't it? One of the main themes. We're going to get them. Why is it so popular to watch others taking revenge, whether in movies, on television, or in person, with someone we know? Why do we enjoy watching that? What's the pleasure in that?
It's satisfactory
Why?
because, well, yeah, I don't really know.
Your mom's going to help you.
I think it goes back what Larry said. These are very strong feelings, like opposite of love, like the hatred. So you get a satisfaction.
We want to see the culprit get paid back.
Okay, going back to what Victor said. Justice. We want justice.
That didn't work.
I think it vindicates us too. When we feel that way, if it's on television and it was a successful show or a successful movie or something, it kind of vindicates how we feel. And of course, if it's on television, it's got to be right, right?
Yeah, of course. Like the internet. If it's on the internet, it has to be true. David? Say the same thing? Okay. Satan fell because, as stated in Isaiah 14:12-14, Satan's pride was to look out for number one, himself. Satan wanted to be his own God and bow to no one. Satan believes that the law of serving oneself is so fundamental and universal that everyone must think like he does. He even thinks Job shares in his satanic philosophy. So Satan tells God that the only reason Job loves God is because God showers him with blessings. God protects Job from harm. Satan wages that if God puts Job in some really painful circumstances and takes away all his blessings, Job will curse God to his face. Satan believes that deep down all human creatures are the same. Even though God has condemned Satan for being prideful and rebellious, Satan believes Job is a representative of earthly humans, and Job is really no different from Satan. That he will rebel and fall. Why do you think God allowed this test to occur? What is the point as God is observing and interacting with the humans he created? It's always frustrated me to read, "Then the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright. He's a man who fears God and shuns evil.'" And then he goes about allowing this test. Why is even God talking to Satan? What are your thoughts on this? Why does God allow this?
I think Mark mentioned last week when we talked about this that this is a long view, and when you talk about God being in the present, we all know who Job was and what he went through and the story of his faith, and that was centuries ago. And so it has been a message to Christians, a faithful message for centuries.
So God provided the example, and it's inspired Scripture because we benefit
Right.
from reading about Job's faith. Great. Someone else?
That's what Judy was going to say.
It's God showing his power
Okay.
over us.
Okay. It is a demonstration that God's in control, even of Satan. Sometimes people get confused by that. You know, you watch enough Star Wars movies and you think maybe there's a equal good and bad going on here, and it's not true.
kind of odd thought, but maybe he's also showing the difference. Humans are created differently than angels. I don't know if you follow my thought. I don't even know how to explain. Satan assumed that everybody will fall. God knew that humans who love him will not fall.
Birthday boy has a comment.
You know, the whole thing, when you hear what God made Job go through, all these things, but still he loved him.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is the same with us, and a lot of things that we go through. God is there for us and still loves us.
Now, I have some bad news for you. The longer you live, the more you're going to experience pain and suffering and observe pain and suffering. It compounds itself. It doesn't get easier as you get older. It gets more complicated and more difficult. We were with Becky's parents a couple days ago. They're 87 and 88. It's tough. I mean, they're doing okay, living independently, but it's tough. And I talked with Beck's dad, my father-in-law, Bill, and he said, you know, I ache all over. It just seems like I get up and take care of these things, and I've got about 3-4 hours of good energy, so I take care of things like laundry and other things and working on the lawn, and then I take my long nap in the afternoon, cook the evening meal, and go to bed. And he said, it's hard. It's effort to live. Because we had talked to them recently about we want to do some traveling now that we're retired, and he was sharing with us all the wonderful things they did at that age when they first retired. And you have to do that before all that hits. Because now there's a new phase. It's a transition to heaven. And the other thing that we talked about was all that he's observed in his life from the time he served fighting in the Korean War to now, how complicated the people that he loves and knows, how that's been complicated by all the things they've gone through. You know, you observe a lot of pain and suffering as you get older, especially if you have children.
Yeah, I've often used the illustration of compounded interest. So the older you get, the more you have suffered and so forth. If there's a contest between God and Satan, and this isn't the only theme we would follow, but as Jesus said, greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world, and that God perseveres towards us so that we will persevere in him. And he empowers us to do what we have to do. So I think, in a sense, that truth was proven in the life of Job. That God proved himself more powerful in Job than Satan could hurl at him.
As long as you're willing to be in here, let me ask you a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
You can refuse to answer, but do you believe Job's in heaven?
Yeah, he's a righteous man.
I do too. So
not that he was good, but he's accounted as righteous.
So
he believed.
When this is an example for us to review, is Satan really talking about the possibility of causing men to fall and lose the ability to go to heaven?
I think Satan is a very perverted man who loves evil and hates people. And he will do anything he can to destroy the image of God. But God is more powerful. Yeah. He gets a sick kick out of hurting people.
Do you think he can cause people to fall?
No, I don't think he can.
Okay.
I think one who is saved has the Lord in him or her, and God will empower us to persevere.
So you would say that God calls those who are saved and does not call others who are not saved. Therefore, Satan has no real influence. So what we're doing here is talking about people who are, whether we say going to be Christians or eternally secured from the foundation of the world, and those who are not. And so he's talking here to a select group of those who are, what, not? Or,
Well, as a believer, I would put it in the context of a Christian life. You're also kind of combining the non-Christian life.
right.
But if you say, can Satan actually dissuade somebody away from God and the faith and
the answer
dump
would
it?
be no.
I would say no, and if they did, were they saved to begin with?
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference, because salvation is really not about a decision you've made, but whether you are indwelt by the Holy Spirit. I know that involves a decision, you know, but the real proof is whether the Holy Spirit is in you or not. And
There's a lot of confusion about this verse of Satan going around devouring. Be careful,
Yeah.
because he'll devour you,
yeah,
and what that means.
well, I think that Christians can certainly give in, and Christians can live miserable lives.
Yeah. So
And-
they become like rebellious children.
Yeah, it doesn't steal them away from the Lord, but they're miserable.
Thank you.
I would agree with that, but I would add to it that not only can he make us miserable, but he can make us ineffective. And as far as your question earlier, if I understood what you were asking, it sounded like you were asking, why is Satan bothering with Job if he's already saved?
Precisely.
And I think it's important that we not forget that Satan is not all-knowing, and God is the one that can look at the hearts of man. I'm not sure that Satan can necessarily do that. He can see that Job is living a righteous life, but I think there are people who live outwardly righteous lives who aren't necessarily saved.
Yeah.
And so let's not give Satan credit for knowing the hearts of man. I don't think he does.
And he could only be one place at a time. He's not omnipresent. I mean, he's got a whole army, but
So many times I have heard that, especially when you first come to Christ, the devil works like heck to take you away, to stop this from happening.
yeah.
So is that in conflict with what you're
I
saying?
don't think so. I think, see, what Larry is saying is that you were chosen before the foundation of the world.
No, I'm not going there.
Okay, what are
No.
you saying?
I'm just saying that if you are saved and you truly have the Holy Spirit in you,
Okay,
God will prove himself faithful by working in you
yeah.
and giving you the ability to meet what you have to do.
Okay, fair enough. So when you become a Christian, I also believe that's true, that he wants you to be, going back to what Mark said, ineffectual. He wants you to be sort of paralyzed in your faith. You know, all of a sudden, all these things come on you. When you first go through the honeymoon of accepting Christ, and you first go through the honeymoon of knowing the Lord, it just seems like, okay, now my life is going to work out great, finally. And it doesn't work that way. After the honeymoon is over, things begin to crash in, and you go, wait a minute, where's the Lord in this? That's where Satan really wants to work you over, because then you won't be a good testimony.
And it isn't up to us to muster up great faith. That is God's doing. And I think we got to put our faith in God's ability to help us.
What's so ironic is the harder you try to build up your faith, the more it becomes pride.
And
The
a
more you
chore.
recognize it's not about you and you humble yourself before the Lord, the more your faith grows.
Yeah.
Just almost contradictory here.
Faith doesn't come from us. Faith comes from God. And I think we put our faith in his faithfulness. So I go back to the verse I quoted, greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. And I think God proved that, and he's proving it in us too.
Yeah.
Why do we persevere? Because he perseveres towards us.
It doesn't
He's
negate
good.
our responsibility to study, pray.
That's correct. No, we have a responsibility also.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Yes.
I admit, I have never, the thought never occurred to me, why is God talking to Satan? Why are they having that conversation? So thank you for bringing that up. I can mull on that now. But I have, just even in my own life, questioned, why is God allowing this to happen?
Yeah.
So I think this has been really great discussion, but I don't know that that question has necessarily been answered.
I'm not sure it will be.
You know, thousands of years later, we can sit here and discuss it, you know, as outsiders looking in. But the degree of testing that God allowed Job, who he called righteous, whom he loved, to go through,
Yeah.
I think can cause, well, I'll say us, but I mean me, at times to question God's goodness.
Yeah.
Why would a good and loving God allow some of the, I mean, what Job went through must have been just horrendous.
It's awful.
And then we think about persecuted Christians, you know, today, modern life, but we don't know where they are necessarily or know somebody, you know, personally to be able to stand side by side and know exactly what it is that they're going through. And why does God allow somebody who's fighting for him, showing his love and his goodness and his greatness to be tortured?
You know,
for it?
before Christmas, my last class in here, I'm going to address that. But it's going to take me a while, and I have to lay this foundation first. So you keep coming back. Yes.
And just to dovetail off, I'm going to repeat something Mark said again last week, and that this whole story isn't, this whole event isn't about Job. This event was between God and Satan.
Yes.
And it was, Job was a vessel. And God, and as Larry said, our faith is as strong as the person we have faith in. And we don't have to have tons of faith. We just have to just believe and be obedient. And that's all Job was. And God made it right with him in the end. But it wasn't about Job. Job never turned his eyes on himself.
I think it's so hard for us, Debbie, as humans, to think that it isn't all about us. We always assume that everything should be about me. You know, I shouldn't have to suffer. I shouldn't have to deal with these difficult things and so forth. But it's not about us, and this is a good example of that. Yes.
Don't you think sometimes we go through things, God allows us to go through things, so that people who don't believe want to see what we're going to do?
Well, certainly there's an observation of our testimony. It's not unlike some people to enjoy our suffering. Hate to share that, but most theologians believe Job is the oldest book in the Bible. But it reads like one of the most modern and confronts the issues we face head on today. It reads like one man confronting the pain and suffering of this world when it does not seem to make sense. The reoccurring theme seems to be, how can a good God allow suffering? The problem of pain and suffering is a modern obsession. Opioids, antidepressants, therapists, etc., are increasing every year to help us deal with the physical and emotional pain of suffering. However, it's hard for us to compare our losses with Job's losses. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 5,000 oxen, 500 donkeys, numerous. I don't even have one donkey. 7 sons, 3 daughters, which were all of his children, and Job's health. Sores broke out from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. He was scraping them. Greatest man in all the East was reduced to the most pitiable. This book is the story of the worst things happening to the best person of his day. When asked what the book of Job is about, the common response is that Job is the most complete book of suffering. Job is about terrible grief and bewildering pain, and it is true that most of the book is about suffering. However, Philip Yancey gives us another perspective that I found helpful in applying what we can learn from this book. Job, chapters 3 through 37, have no action, but just the opinionated dialogues of Job's 3 friends, and then Elihu later, and then Job. All of Job's friends are trying to explain how this suffering is as a result of what Job has done. Yancey, however, concludes the primary theme of Job is not suffering and pain. Pain and suffering are important to the story, but it's not the central theme. Yancey concluded the book of Job is answering the cosmic questions beyond the scope of humans. he concludes Job is about faith. In Job chapters 1 and 2, Job's drama on earth had its origins in a cosmic drama in heaven. God is the central character in the Bible, and the book of Job is more from God's viewpoint than Job's viewpoint. Job's perspective is from chapter 3 on, but the backdrop to all the book is set up in the first 2 chapters from God's perspective. We're given unique insight into what is going to happen in Job's life when we read Job 1 and 2. However, Job is not given this insight. What is unusual about this insight is that God provides us with all the detail except one. How will Job respond? Will Job trust God or deny God? We have insight into what has been revealed about what is going on, but Job and his friends are not given any reasons why this is happening. Job, all through this book, is trying to discover what we already know. It is not Job's endurance or ability to deal with pain and suffering, but rather Job's faith in God despite his earthly circumstances. Job scratches his boils with shards of pottery, asking, why me? What did I do wrong? What is God trying to tell me? We're going to pick it up from there next week because now it gets more interesting. Now we're starting to get into the meat of helping us understand a little bit more about why there is pain and suffering. So I thank you for your comments, and I will see you next week.